This is the Bob Davis Podcast YouTube channel, and we're going to talk about changes and improvements. I guess you could call this a pre-announcement, but changes and improvements to this channel are going to be happening, and I'm going to talk about that in this episode. Before I get into the whole thing, I'm going to do something I have not done on the YouTube channel, but I do it on the podcasts all the time. And this is to thank people who have sent contributions, donations to the BobDavisPodcast.com and to essentially this channel. These help me, and I have to explain a little bit. These help me continue to travel, and this whole question of travel is going to become important in the podcast. So these are the people that have consistently given me donations and contributions to help the channel continue and to continue this sort of travel adventure that I do videos about. And so I want to thank Travis. I want to thank Lisa Delahunt, Mike Murphy, Jeffrey Dunn. I've got a whole list of people, but I'm not going to do the entire list. Brandon, Mindy Collins, Judy and Katie Murphy, and Mike Murphy, and many, many others. So thank you guys for your donations. And that's going to come up later in this episode. But the reason I'm doing this is that it has come to my attention, or I've managed to suss out from just watching how this channel is doing and how the podcasts are doing, that you want to see me travel. And I am, in fact, spending a lot of time at the lake. This is a perfect summer. It really has been incredible. Today, it's a little windy, especially down at the lake. I would have liked to have done this episode from the lake, but the lake is too windy, so we're up at the cabin. And I've got the sliding door open so we can kind of feel a little bit of the outdoor experience. But it's just real windy at the lake, so I'm not doing this particular episode down at the lake. However, there will be some video. So you'll see I'll be cutting some stuff in so that you can kind of see what's going on and where I am as I spend this perfect summer up at the lake. In the future, I will not spend as much time up here as I have this year. I got here in, I think it was late May. It might have been early June. I don't remember. But up here, it was still really early spring, and so you got to see a little bit of the metamorphosis. But travel is really what this channel is all about, and specifically travel on rubber, in other words, on the road in rural America. There's lots of sights to see. There's history. There's a ton of things to see, and that's what we're going to talk about in this particular episode. I'm taking steps this summer to make continuous travel possible. And that means there is a little bit of a financial reconfiguration, and I can't talk about it because I haven't gotten full approval to do it yet, but I will be making an announcement soon, hence the pre-announcement announcement. I want to let people know it's coming. And in this effort, I mentioned the contributors because they're going to become even more important to the channel. And I am doing this to give something to the people who have helped keep this channel going. And it will continue. In other words, it will be the gift that keeps on giving for people who make contributions, regardless of whether it's now or it's in the future. So I'm going to do something that will allow you to get a little something out of making contributions to the Bob Davis Podcast. I just can't announce it right now because it hasn't been approved. And when it's fully approved, then I can announce that portion of the thing. I have an affinity for rural America. I have an affinity for the United States. And I think it comes from early travel with my family throughout the Midwest and the Atlantic states all the way down to Florida. I talked about that in the last episode when I talked about my favorite road trips, and I gave a little history at the end. And I think traveling so much as a young person had a huge effect. one of my in-laws just built, he renovated an old farmhouse here, and I was really happy to see a picture my mom painted of a barn with the golden wheat around it. And she did that, and I remember when I saw that picture, I haven't seen that picture in a long time, and he's had it for a while, the family's had it for a while, and so they put it up in this farmhouse, and it fits perfectly because it's a sort of bucolic farm setting. And I remember them taking 35 millimeter slides of all of these barns in Iowa and Indiana and Southern Illinois and Tennessee and so on when we would travel. So my travel bug, in particular, my travel bug for the United States, goes back pretty deep. Because the truth is, even when I cover old routes and old road trips, such as the kind that I've talked about in the last episode, I just learn a lot. And I find that even if you have traveled to a place, there is a tendency to discover things you didn't see before and to learn new things. So in that way, I don't think it ever gets old. The other thing is that as opposed to Europe, the United States is a lot more dynamic. There's a lot of change year to year, decade to decade, half decade to half decade in the United States. So you travel through one part of the country, and 5 years later, you go through that part of the country and you see change. And so that change is informative. And I love that. That's one of the things that I love about travel and why I say I don't think it ever gets old. So I have traveled in this country in a certain rig for 10 years. And before that, I drove cars, I drove with my parents and so forth. So let's talk about the rig. So this rig that I have traveled for the past 10 years in is my 2000 Ford 7.3 diesel ambulance. It is still an ambulance. I sleep on the floor. I have pads and stuff that I put down, but I still sleep on the floor. I cook over campfires. I stay in truck stops, I stay in national forests, I stay in state forests and state parks, and I stay in national forests and national parks, as well as Bureau of Land Management and free campgrounds, if it seems reasonable and if it seems like it's going to work. I want people to understand there's no kitchen in Mobile Podcast Command. It was set up as an audio truck. It was never changed from being an ambulance. It had certain things about it which made it useful as an audio truck, and that's why I got it, because when I got the truck, I was still working in radio, and I was driving around, and so I would take the truck to events and things like that. And then later, when I got out of radio day to day and started podcasting, I would still take it. And then when I started to travel, I didn't want to travel in the ambulance. I wanted to travel in some kind of an RV, or I imagined myself in these luxurious surroundings, and discovered that wasn't going to work. And then in 2020 with COVID, I just said, I'm not putting up with this, standing in line at the Trader Joe's with the boarded up windows trying to buy beef jerky, as I've often said. So then I went out full time, and I realized that, yes, indeed, I was going to be taking the ambulance. So I took the ambulance, and it's been a great rig. It now has 245,000 miles on it. It still runs great. I don't think there's a lot wrong with it, but I am looking for a new rig, primarily because I need a bed. I can tell you that you shouldn't worry if you are a nomad or if you're a traveler. Don't worry, because it will not be an RV for many reasons, and I will do some episodes about why it won't be an RV. And I think it's going to end up being, and I'm hoping to make sure that it ends up being just as funky as Mobile Podcast Command. When I first got the ambulance, nobody had an ambulance. So over the years, people have figured out you can convert ambulances. When I first got the ambulance, nobody had an ambulance, and I'll tell you, it cost $4,000 when I bought it initially. So it was a great buy, and it's been a great rig. It's just I need a bed. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what I have to do, and I need a little bit more space to work. And so this is what I am doing, and it's proving to be, and I will do episodes about this when the time comes, it is proving to be more difficult to find what I'm looking for than I thought it would be. So we'll talk about that. I might end up going out again in September/October in the ambulance, but we'll see. It's possible we'll have a new rig this fall, and I'm actually pretty excited about that. So stand by for that. That is why I am sitting on the lake. And as you know, I've documented this metamorphosis from early spring to late spring. And I kind of want to hang around for fall, because now we are having, as you can see out the window, and as you can see also through some of the stuff I'm showing you, we are having an incredibly lush summer. There has been a huge amount of rain up here from spring all the way to now, and so the corn is very high. The beans are very high. They're coming up, whatever the farmers use to describe good beans as they come up. And there is just tremendous amounts of lush green all over the place. And it's a perfect summer. Up here in northern Wisconsin, you know, these people, 90 degrees is too hot. They swoon when it's 90. If you spent any time in the desert, you know that 90 degrees is quite comfortable. But here, 79, 77, 75 is actually, for some people, too warm. You know, so when it's 70, I have to put my coat on, whereas everyone else is like, what's wrong with you? But it's been varying degrees of heat and varying degrees of beauty as the result of all the rain. And that's kind of one of the reasons I'm sitting here, because suddenly I've realized that there's lots of things to document on camera. Some of the small towns, some of the roads, some of the places that I go without necessarily letting you know where I am. And I will talk about this a little bit here in a minute. In other words, if you know, you know. So if you're watching this and you're from this part of the country and you're from this part of Wisconsin, well, then you're going to know where I am, which is fine. But I don't do the whole, here's where I am, here's how to get here kind of thing. But one of the biggest problems with travel is YouTubers want to document everything. And as a result, people end up going places because they're told, this is how you get here, you need to see this, this is where you get the best malt, this is where you get the best milkshakes, here I am on Route 66, so that there is really no place for a person to sort of discover things for themselves. So I'm not going to do that to this area. So when you add that all together, you know, the new rig and also this portending announcement about the rejiggering financially of what I'm doing, there's actually a lot that I just can't talk about yet. But I thought I should let viewers know what is going on, and considering the fact that summertime is really the time for road trips, and I'm not road tripping. That's why I did the video about my favorite road trips, because I'm kind of jonesing to road trip, get out there, but at the same time, I've got these things I have to do. And it's really two things, and it's just requiring a lot. And I can't, I'll talk about it when I actually make the announcement and talk about what I am doing. I will talk about those things, but it's very interesting to me how, and hopefully to you, when you're doing stuff and you're trying to accomplish something and you think, oh, it's just these two little things that I'm doing. It's not that big of a deal. And then you get into it and you're like, roadblock after roadblock, and the amount you can't, the way things are in this country today, you can't just do something. Everything takes time to do. Everything takes a number of steps. You have to be patient. You can't get down on yourself. So this is what I'm doing every day, kind of making incremental steps toward finding a new rig, as well as this effort to reconfigure the channel to actually benefit people contributing and making donations to this thing. So again, there's a lot that I should not and won't talk about just yet. So when it comes to talking about travel, it makes me kind of think about some of the best trips I've taken. It takes me back to one of my favorite trips, which was across the lakes, the Great Lakes, east over to New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine, and I did this huge trip, and then on the way back kind of cut down through the Midwest. It was really amazing. And at that time, rural America in mid to late August, I think I left on August 5th that year, is really about abundance, this lush green, and eventually as you get toward late August and early September, it's dry and it just gets hot. And that's the sort of the final growing spurt. So when I left Wisconsin and headed east, I was confronted with this just field after field after field of corn and this feeling of great abundance. And it was really fantastic. Lakes, valleys, rivers, meadows, upstate New York, upstate Maine, all along the border up there was a really, really great trip. So again, I kind of pine away for that, and it's really hard then to just get these two things taken care of. Most of the first is done and just awaiting some final approvals, and the second is just a matter of just a hard slog. So we'll talk about that when it comes to that. Now, finally, I want to talk a little bit about content. And I want to talk a little bit about content in YouTube, TikTok primarily, but you can sort of include Instagram in there, because I think it helps explain what my motivation for this channel is and what I'm doing with these podcasts. So yeah, many people on IG and TikTok and YouTube, and often they end up OnlyFans style, really opening their lives without filter to the rest of the world. So let's talk about an artist or creator. And if you're a YouTube creator, then that means you. Or if you're an artist, that means you. Even artists fall into this trap too. And this is why I was saying I'm not going to tell you where I am or show you where I am. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. And you won't know because I'm not going to necessarily say so. And it's also why I don't tell you where to get the best cheeseburger, because if you decide to travel, I want you to be able to experience that, in your own process. Because that's the best way. Hey, I found this great place. Even if you go out later and somebody goes, oh, I already saw that, it doesn't matter because you experienced it, and that's what's really great. So an artist or creator knows this practice of sharing everything without filter is deleterious to well-being and to the creative process, because what happens is it's the life force that is the essence of what we create. And I don't mean just people who paint, but I mean anyone who considers what they do really a high-level craft or an art understands what I'm saying. And if you're creating, you're doing it. And so you can do it like a business, but it's also something that involves life force. And there is a requirement to save something for ourselves so that we can continue to create. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I could say that more. I could talk about that more, but I don't want to preach. But I think it's really important to say that that's one of the primary motivators. It's also why sometimes there's gaps in posting. Not necessarily because I, am lazy, but because I'm agonizing over what to put up, or I have nothing to say. So I don't want to just put stuff up and open my life without filter to quote unquote share, because I don't think it's going to be that great anyway. But here's what I'm doing, and it's kind of the way that I explain what I'm doing. If you do it differently, that's your business. Good for you. I don't. This is the way I do it. I'm having an experience. This is an experience that I created for myself. which is to travel, and to travel continuously. And the more I travel, the better I feel. So this is an experience that I created for myself. I didn't buy an experience. I didn't imitate an experience. I expose and I share my experiences when I see fit, and I expose or share my experiences to the rest of the world when I think there's going to be some value for you. So this is an ongoing story. It has installments. It has episodes. Sometimes there's a lot of episodes, and sometimes there are a few episodes, but there's always episodes to what I'm doing, because I'm selectively saying, okay, I think this is something that's worth sharing. Again, it's an ongoing story. So it's not a how-to, it's not a where-to, it's not a when-to. That's up to you. If you want to travel, if you watch these videos and you're inspired, or if you listen to these podcasts and you're inspired, great. Do it your way. Because you'll make a lot of mistakes, but you'll also learn from those mistakes. So an example would be, right now I'm fascinated with this summer that we're having up here, and I've been up here for many summers of my life, and sometimes there are cold, wet summers, and they're not so great, and sometimes there's perfect summers. This is about as close to perfect as we have seen in quite some time, so it's pretty cool. And I am then, therefore, fascinated and compelled to share pictures of the perfect summer here at the lake. And I'm also showing pictures of the lush beauty, and here and there, as I mentioned earlier, the small town experience, which is interesting. You know, the history of these towns up here is that in the 50s, when the average farm was about 250 acres or less, 100 acres, because you just simply were not physically able to farm, all that acreage, these towns were bustling. And these days they don't bustle as much, but they're still here, and we are all hoping that the small town experience continues to grow and to change a little bit, but also become more vibrant eventually. And in this way, the pictures really are an allegory. Finally, I am compelled to talk a little bit about Quartzsite, Arizona, and I have a disclaimer at the beginning. Sometimes my comments can be interpreted as harsh, and they're seldom meant harshly. And I do not want to make harsh comments about Quartzsite, the people camping in Quartzsite, Arizona, or anything else. All I can do is draw on my own experience, and I'm going to talk about a video that I did that has a lot of views and a lot of reaction, which had to do with a price increase for long-term visitor area camping on what they call LTVA campgrounds close to Quartzsite. Quartzsite, Arizona is on the 10, pretty much half between Tucson and Los Angeles. And it is a place that years and years ago, probably in the early 80s, was a Mecca for RVers. And it was World War II vets and Korean vets, as I've often talked about, with their RVs from up north, came down when they first opened the LTVAs after some short time after the creation of the Bureau of Land Management, which was created to replace something called homesteading. I don't have time to explain that, but it was created in the mid-70s, late 70s, to manage federal lands. And also, as part of that, they opened some campgrounds. Originally, the long-term visitor areas in Quartzsite, Arizona, were free. And so hundreds of thousands of people went there. And so if you were in Quartzsite in 1983, you would have thought you were in New York City, because the town was jam-packed with campers and RVs and so forth. And these were people in their 60s and 50s and 70s then. Most of them are gone now and have been replaced with a different group of campers. And the LTVAs eventually started charging. And the most recent rate was $180 for April to basically, September/October, depending on what time you got down there, to April, May, when generally the heat is just too much for people that are from the northern tier, so they go back to, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Fargo, or wherever they're from. And Quartzsite, obviously, with the demise of those older people in the 80s, kind of the RV thing kind of fell apart after a while. And I think there was a long period of kind of just a slow deterioration from the older generation until the younger generation kind of came in to the process. In Quartzsite, around 2001, 2, 3, this nomad movement in the United States, so get a van life, nomad life, kind of took hold. And they made the movie Nomadland, and it came out just before the pandemic. I never saw it until I was on the road, so I had no idea. I went to Quartzsite the first time because I was going to network with the people at the RV show. I had been networking with local businesses because I had this idea in my head that podcasts were going to be like local radio stations, and I was going to sell advertising like a local radio station. And so I started doing these business networking meetings with local businesses, and I couldn't help them, they couldn't help me. It just didn't work out. So I decided in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, that I was going to go, and I was going to go out on the road permanently. And what I would do is network with RV companies and sell advertising to RV companies to my podcast. So I went to Quartzsite in January of 2021 to go to the RV show. I got there like January 5th, learned that the RV show didn't start till January 26th or something. And then around the middle of the month, my mom died. And I had to go back to Virginia to deal with all of that. And that was pretty emotional. And I ended up staying there for, I don't know, until April or May. And then I went back out west. I don't remember. And this is interesting thing about grief. I have no idea what I did, where I went after that. I've forgotten, or I don't even know that I ever mentally recorded where I was consciously. So that was my introduction to Quartzsite. The next year, we started to see the inflation, and the idea was we're gonna sit out here and basically not consume any fuel or expose ourselves to inflation. I did a lot of podcasts about that. And I had a great time because at that time, there were a lot of people that were out that were people who had, stimulus money. They had PPP loans. They had EIDL loans. They had money from the government. They were at unemployment. And they went out and they either borrowed grandpa's RV, or they bought RVs used, or they bought whatever they bought. And many people came out in their car, and that was that. Fast forward to today, post Nomadland and everything else, the Bureau of Land Management, in all of their confused and twisted wisdom, decided they were going to increase prices at a time when inflation was 8 or 9% and people could ill afford even meat, and now it's even worse. And so I put up a video when I learned, because I was down there on September 5th of last year, put up a video that said they're going to increase prices. Now, this is where I have to be careful of what I say, because this is some of these are generalizations, but it needs to be said, just so people understand. I have never updated the video. So people are commenting on the video. Still, it has somewhere around 70,000 views. And they're commenting on the video still saying, you don't have any new information on this video. Well, it was made a year ago, first of all. And second of all, I will not be updating the video. To make a long story short, a group of us made videos and put a lot of pressure on the BLM. Myself, Campulence Man, Dark Nomad, and a couple other people, Robert or Dark Nomad really covered the thing. He went to all the meetings, and I just got disgusted because I put this video up that was really strong, and the comments were very depressing because it indicated a vast lack of knowledge. So I'll say it's ignorance about how to get things done in terms of how to put pressure on the federal government or local governments and how to do anything. Furthermore, I then, because the scales fell from my eyes, I began looking again at what was really going on, and what I saw in the LTVAs and other parts of the campgrounds around Quartzsite, a pretty strong deterioration. So if you were a person that bought an RV and you wanted to go camping and you thought the LTVA would be a great spot, you might be right next to meth heads or worse. And it became clear to me that it was potentially unsafe. And so I said, and I did a video about it and a podcast about it when I was in the Sierra. I said, I explained why I thought it was deteriorating. And so I now have come to the conclusion that I do not feel the need to return to Quartzsite every winter, or if ever. It's going to be a number of years before I go back to Quartzsite. Part of it is I've had the experience. I don't need to have that experience again. There's other experiences that I think would be good for me. And I do not need to create content and push it into a small group of people who are going to watch videos again and again to push up the number of views and viewing time and so forth and so on, but have to deal with shocking amounts of ignorant comments. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And and to be clear about it, it's a generalization. There are really some nice people there, but the nice people that I've met are actually either A, horrified, or deeply concerned about the reality of what is going on out there. And what is it, Bob Davis? Well, I'll tell you. What's happening is the people are falling off the end of the economic ladder, sometimes through no fault of their own, sometimes because they've let their skills atrophy, sometimes they're really sick mentally and in terms of addictions. And they are going out in their cars and they end up in the desert. In fact, it is true that the authorities pull 7 or 8 dead bodies a year every summer out of that desert because people go there and they can't leave because they have no money. So they end up camping in the desert. My friend Mike goes out and does water runs and tries to keep these people hydrated, but he finds dead bodies, and the police find dead bodies out there all the time. When Quartzsite was Tyson Wells, it was a stagecoach stop, and it was described by 2 sisters who had stopped there on a stagecoach back around 1910, maybe even a little earlier or a little later, as a melancholy place where melancholy things happen. There's always that vibe in Quartzsite, which is one of the reasons that makes it so great, unless you're in around a lot of quartz, and then the vibe is very high. But it can be a very negative experience, and so I would caution people to think twice about going there. And the other reason is that the Bureau of Land Management, Yuma Quartzsite Field Office, so it's Arizona and mostly Arizona, is incompetent. Yuma has the same problems. The Yuma LTVA smells like a sewer because there's a broken sewer head they won't fix. The bathrooms don't work, and I could go on and on. So it's really, and by the way, I've camped in other Bureau of Land Management campgrounds, and they're not like that. Whether it's California or other parts of the West, I've camped at some great campgrounds that are Bureau of Land Management campgrounds that are just as nice as any U.S. forest or national park. So that's the thing about Quartzsite. I do not intend to or am trying to put people down who are there, who have literally fallen off the end of the economic ladder. That's not my intention. But I will tell you that if things continue the way they are currently economically, there are going to be more people falling off the end of the economic ladder. And as a result, you will see more and more people in their cars or broken down RVs, whether it's San Diego, and there's a lot of them there, or places like Quartzsite, when they figure out that they exist and they can just go out there. And they don't pay. So it's a problematic area. I suppose if I really wanted to report on it, I could report on it. But I would rather not have that experience. I would rather move on to a higher quality experience and not be in a situation where I'm confronted with van life dangers and these constant strange ideas about free camping and stealth camping and everything else. They know you're camping. They know when you're parked in a Love's parking lot for 3 days that you're camping there, and you're not fooling anyone with a box truck. They know exactly what you're doing, and they'll take steps. And towns are increasingly taking steps to prevent this because of, I don't want to call them bad actors, but again, it's people who've fallen out of the economic ladder and they're parked in these places. I did a video and a podcast about the truck stop nation, about the truck stops in Nevada. So I've gone on a little long about it, but I wanted to update everybody as far as there will be no price increase in Quartzsite, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's talk that it may be sold. There's talk that the administration is going to sell off portions of the BLM. Might not be a bad idea. The BLM takes in billions of dollars a year with mineral rights and grazing rights, and so they own a lot of land out west, the government, and they are considering selling portions of it. We'll see how that plays out, and I probably won't talk about that because that's kind of not where I'm going. So there you go. That's basically an update on what I'm doing and a pre-announcement. Thanks for the donations at the BobDavisPodcast.com. You just go to the website and you look for the big yellow donate button right there on the page. Click on it. It takes you to PayPal right now, and you can make any kind of donation you want. In the future, there will be some incentives for people who donate, and I think they're going to be pretty good. So we'll talk about that in a future podcast here on YouTube and also on the audio podcast as well. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking and sharing, and really enjoying watching the subscriber group grow and watching the videos as well. And I will be traveling this fall, so stand by for news. Bye-bye. 3, 2, 1. Let's do it again. 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye. Okay.